The wind howled through the barren trees of the Appalachian wilderness, carrying snowflakes that stung like tiny daggers against exposed skin. December 1832 had brought the harshest winter in memory to these mountains, and as darkness fell on, that fateful evening, the creaking wagon wheels finally gave out. Sophia Miller, 8 months pregnant and newly widowed, watched in helpless despair as the last of the travelers who had reluctantly taken her along continued down the narrow mountain pass, their lanterns fading into the swirling white void, leaving her alone with nothing but her grief and the child that kicked beneath her heart. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Sophia pulled her threadbare wool coat tighter around her swollen belly as the last glimmers from the departing wagon train disappeared into the darkness. She had known the Prescott family for less than a week, having been grudgingly allowed to join their journey west after pleading her case. A woman alone, carrying a child, was considered bad luck by many travelers, a burden they couldn't afford. In these treacherous conditions, we can't spare the supplies, Jason Prescott had explained that morning when the wagon wheel first started showing signs of strain. If that wheel gives out completely, you'll have to make your own way. We've got 5 children to think about. Sophia had nodded, understanding their position even as fear tightened around her throat. Now, as the wheel lay splintered beyond repair and the Prescott's wagon disappeared around the bend, that fear blossomed into full-blown terror. 25 years old, raised in the comfort of Boston society, Sophia Miller had never imagined finding herself in such desperate circumstances. 6 months ago, she had been Sophia Blackwell, the cherished daughter of a successful merchant, newly married, to Thomas Miller, a charming entrepreneur with dreams of establishing trading posts along the frontier. When Thomas spoke of opportunity in the Western Territories, his eyes sparkled with such conviction that Sophia had willingly left behind her sheltered life. "Think of it, my love," he'd whispered as they lay in bed, his hand resting gently on her stomach where their child grew. "Our son will grow up in a land of boundless possibilities. He'll be a true American, shaped by the frontier rather than the constraints of Boston society." Their journey had begun with such hope, traveling with a larger group of settlers bound for Missouri Territory. But 3 weeks into their journey, a sudden fever had swept through their camp. Thomas, always so strong and vital, had succumbed. Within days, leaving Sophia pregnant and alone among strangers, the original group had splintered after the illness claimed 7 lives, with families regrouping based on their intended destinations. No one had particularly wanted the widowed. Sophia, with her fine manners and obvious inexperience with frontier hardships. The Prescotts had finally agreed to let her travel with them as far as their paths aligned, but made it clear that she was on her own once they reached the Cumberland Gap. Now, fate had decided she wouldn't even make it that far. Sophia surveyed, her meager belongings strapped to the broken wagon, one trunk containing clothing, a small pouch of coins sewn into her petticoat, Thomas's compass and map, a water canteen, some hard biscuits, dried beef, and a single blanket. Not nearly enough to survive a winter night in these mountains, let alone the weeks it would take to reach civilization on foot. The baby kicked vigorously, as if protesting their dire circumstances. Sophia placed a protective hand over her belly, suddenly angry rather than afraid. "We will survive this," she whispered, the words forming ice crystals in the frigid air. "I promise you that much." With newfound determination, Sophia gathered what she could carry. She emptied her trunk, layering every article of clothing onto her body. She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders like a shawl, tucked the food and water into a makeshift bundle, and secured Thomas's compass and hunting knife at her waist. The gold coins remained hidden in her petticoat, the most valuable and least useful of her possessions in these wilderness conditions. The first task was finding shelter before nightfall completely enveloped the forest. The temperature was dropping rapidly and the snowfall increasing in intensity. The road, little more than a rugged trail, offered no protection, but Sophia remembered passing a rock formation about half a mile back. Moving awkwardly under the weight of her pregnancy and multiple layers of clothing, Sophia began retracing their path. Each step required careful consideration in the deepening snow. A twisted ankle or broken leg would mean certain death for both her and her unborn child. The going was painfully slow. What should have been a 15-minute walk stretched into nearly an hour as Sophia navigated the treacherous terrain. Darkness had fully descended, with only the snow's eerie luminescence providing any visibility. The wind had intensified, driving the snowflakes horizontally through the trees and creating ghostly whispers that played tricks on her mind. When the rock formation finally appeared through the swirling white, Sophia nearly wept with relief. It wasn't much, a natural overhang created where several massive boulders had tumbled together, but it offered some protection from the wind and driving snow. Crawling into the small space, Sophia cleared away loose stones and branches to create a relatively flat area. Her fingers were already numb despite the multiple pairs of gloves she wore. The small space would grow colder as the night progressed unless she could create some heat. Thomas had taught her the basics of fire starting during the early weeks of their journey, insisting that every skill could mean the difference between life and death on the frontier. With trembling hands, Sophia gathered what dry tinder she could find beneath the overhang, along with small branches that hadn't yet been soaked by snow. Using Thomas's flint and steel, she struck spark after spark, praying for just one to catch. After what seemed like hours, a tiny ember glowed among the tinder. Sophia bent close, carefully blowing life into the fragile beginning. The ember grew, caught a dried leaf, then a small twig. Within minutes, a modest fire pushed back the darkness of her small shelter. The immediate danger of freezing had been temporarily averted. But Sophia knew this was merely the first challenge of many. The provisions she carried would last 3 days at most. The baby was due within weeks, perhaps sooner given the stress of their situation. And these mountains held dangers beyond just the elements. Wolves, bears, and mountain lions all roamed these forests. As the night deepened and the storm raged outside her small sanctuary, Sophia forced herself to think practically rather than succumb to despair. She would need to find better shelter tomorrow, some place where she could potentially remain until after the baby was born. She would need to set snares for rabbits or squirrels to supplement her meager food supply, and she would need to find a source of fresh water once her canteen was empty. Skills she had barely begun to learn would now determine whether she and her child lived or died. The baby shifted again, a rolling movement beneath her ribs that momentarily took her breath away. Sophia placed both hands on her belly, focusing on that movement rather than the howling wind outside. "Your father believed we were meant for this frontier," she whispered. "He saw something in this wild land that called to his spirit. I didn't understand it then." She stared into the small, dancing flames of her fire. "Perhaps I'm beginning to now." As exhaustion finally overtook her, Sophia arranged herself as comfortably as possible in the confined space, keeping the fire between her and the opening to maximize warmth. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, they had survived the first test. It would have to be enough. What Sophia couldn't know as she drifted into uneasy sleep was that eyes had been watching her struggle through the snow, eyes that had observed her abandonment, her determination, and her skillful creation of shelter and fire, eyes that now kept vigil from the darkness beyond her small haven, weighing choices that would alter the course of multiple lives in the days to come. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe. To our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Dawn broke reluctantly through the heavy cloud cover, casting a grey pallor over the snow-covered landscape. Sophia woke to find her fire reduced to embers and her body stiff from the cold and uncomfortable position. For a moment, disorientation clouded her mind before the harsh reality of her situation came rushing back. The storm had subsided overnight, leaving behind nearly 2 feet of pristine snow that transformed the forest into an alien landscape. Sophia's first attempt to stand sent sharp pains through her lower back, a worrying development this far into her pregnancy. She forced herself to breathe deeply, waiting for the discomfort to pass before venturing out from her makeshift shelter. The broken wagon remained where she had left it, now half buried in snow. Sophia trudged toward it, hoping to salvage anything she might have overlooked in yesterday's panic. The wagon bed yielded an unexpected treasure, a small cast-iron cooking pot that had fallen beneath the seat and been forgotten. She also discovered a watertight tin containing lucifer matches, far more reliable than the flint and steel she'd struggled with the previous evening. As Sophia gathered these newfound resources, a sound stopped her cold, the unmistakable howl of a wolf, answered by another from a different direction. The Prescotts had warned about wolf packs growing bold during harsh winters when game became scarce. A pregnant woman alone would make easy prey. With renewed urgency, Sophia loaded her discoveries into her bundle and began moving deeper into the forest, away from the trail. The rock overhang had served for one desperate night, but she needed more substantial shelter if she hoped to survive. The going was even more difficult than the previous evening. Each step required lifting her feet high above the deep snow, an exhausting process that drained her limited energy reserves. By midday, Sophia had covered less than a mile, and the gnawing emptiness in her stomach reminded her that she needed to conserve her meager food supplies. She allowed herself half a biscuit and a small strip of dried beef, washing it down with melted snow. The meal was hardly satisfying, but it quieted the worst of her hunger. The baby had been unusually still that morning, concerning Sophia, until a strong kick reassured her that the child remained resilient despite their circumstances. As afternoon approached, the temperature began to drop once more. Sophia knew she needed to find shelter and establish a fire before darkness fell again. Her search grew more desperate as the shadows lengthened, until finally she spotted what appeared to be a hollowed-out area beneath the massive roots of a fallen oak tree. Approaching the natural cavity, Sophia noticed something odd. The entrance showed signs of deliberate clearing, with broken branches neatly stacked to one side. Someone had used this shelter before, perhaps recently. The realization brought both hope and caution. Other people in these woods could mean rescue or additional danger. Carefully, Sophia examined the hollow. It extended several feet beneath the upturned root system, creating a space significantly larger than her previous night's shelter. Dried leaves had been arranged in one corner, forming a primitive but effective sleeping pallet. A ring of stones indicated a fire pit, with the roots above showing scorch marks from previous fires. Most telling of all, a small pile of dried firewood had been stacked just inside the entrance, enough for several days if used conservatively. This was no casual traveler's overnight stop, but some place that had been prepared for extended use. Sophia debated the wisdom of appropriating someone else's shelter, but as the temperature continued to drop and her exhaustion mounted, practicality won out over caution. She would use this place tonight and be gone by morning if possible. With shaking hands, she arranged kindling in the stone circle and struck one of her precious matches. The dry wood caught quickly, and soon a cheerful fire pushed back the gloom of the approaching evening. For the first time since being abandoned, Sophia felt a faint glimmer of hope. Using snow melted in her newly acquired pot, she made a thin broth with a small piece of her dried beef, extracting maximum nourishment from her limited supplies. The warm liquid spread through her body, easing some of the bone-deep chill that had settled into her limbs. As darkness claimed the forest once more, Sophia arranged herself on the leaf bed, surprised by its relative comfort. The smoke from her small fire vented effectively through a natural chimney formed by the arrangement of roots, maintaining warmth while preventing suffocation. Sophia was drifting towards sleep when a subtle shift in the atmosphere alerted her to a presence outside the shelter. The fine hairs on her arms rose as instinctive fear sharpened her senses. Someone or something was approaching. Gripping Thomas's hunting knife, Sophia pushed herself into a sitting position, eyes fixed on the entrance. A shadow moved against the snow-reflected moonlight, too deliberate to be an animal. A human figure stooped at the opening, then froze upon seeing the fire and Sophia's frightened face. For an endless moment, Sophia and the stranger regarded each other in tense silence. The figure was wrapped in furs and leather, making it impossible to discern age or gender. Then slowly, deliberately, gloved hands rose in the universal gesture of peace. "I mean no harm," a deep voice said, the words carefully formed as if English was not his first language. "This shelter mine, but you need more than I tonight." Relief and wariness battled within Sophia as she maintained her grip on the knife. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. The figure remained at the entrance, making no move to enter uninvited. "I am called Nathan by white settlers, Cherokee healer from mountain people." He gestured toward her belly. "You carry child soon to arrive. Dangerous to be alone." Sophia's protective instincts warred with her desperate circumstances. This man, Nathan, claimed to be a healer. If true, he might represent her only chance of surviving childbirth in these mountains. Yet she had heard terrible stories of frontier conflicts between settlers and native tribes. "The people who left me," she began cautiously, "they said Cherokee territories were further south." "Most tribe, yes," Nathan acknowledged. "Some of us remain in ancestral mountains, hidden from soldiers who force removal." There was both dignity and sorrow in his voice. "I watch you since sunset yesterday. See wagon people abandon woman with child, not honorable action." The realization that she had been observed during her desperate struggle to survive should have been unsettling, but instead, Sophia felt a strange relief. Someone had witnessed her abandonment, had seen her determination to survive, and rather than taking advantage of her vulnerability, this man had kept watch, perhaps even the vigil she had sensed as she fell asleep the previous night. "This is your shelter," Sophia acknowledged, lowering the knife slightly. "I didn't know. I'll leave." At first light, Nathan shook his head, snowflakes dislodging from his fur-lined hood with the movement. "Winter storm returns tomorrow. You stay." He gestured to the supplies she had scavenged. "Food, little. Child needs more." He placed a small bundle just inside the entrance, then backed away. "Rabbit, herbs for strength. I return morning." Before Sophia could respond, Nathan disappeared into the darkness, moving with a silence that seemed impossible in the creaking, snow-laden forest. Left alone once more, she cautiously examined his offering. The skinned rabbit would provide a substantial meal, and the bundle of dried herbs carried an unfamiliar but not unpleasant aroma. Trust did not come easily in her situation, but hunger and necessity made the decision for her. Using her pot and some snow, Sophia prepared a simple stew with small portions of the rabbit meat. The rich aroma made her realize how insufficient her previous meal had been. As she ate, Sophia considered the strange turn her circumstances had taken. Abandoned by her own kind, she now found herself dependent on the goodwill of a Cherokee healer who, by all rights, had more reason to distrust her than she him. The irony was not lost on her. The baby moved vigorously as the warm food filled Sophia's stomach, almost as if expressing approval of this unexpected development. Despite her lingering wariness, Sophia felt the knot of despair that had formed in her chest begin to loosen slightly. "Perhaps we've found a friend, little one," she whispered, stroking her belly. "Or at least someone who doesn't wish us immediate harm." That night, with a fuller stomach and a more substantial shelter, Sophia slept deeper than she had since Thomas's death. Outside, the wind began to rise once more, carrying the promise of another storm. And somewhere in the darkness, watching, over the hollow beneath the fallen oak, Nathan kept his silent vigil. True to Nathan's prediction, Sophia woke to the sound of wind howling through the forest and fresh snow accumulating at the shelter's entrance. The second winter storm had arrived with vengeful force, making any thought of travel impossible. The fire had burned low during the night, but the well-designed shelter had retained enough warmth to keep the worst of the cold at bay. As Sophia carefully added small branches to revive the flames, a shadow appeared at the entrance. Nathan arrived bearing additional firewood and a deerskin pouch. His movements were deliberate yet graceful as he arranged the wood near the fire pit without intruding too far into the shelter. "Storms stay 3 days," he announced, his breath visible in the cold air. "Water frozen soon, use snow." He placed the deerskin pouch within her reach. "Medicine for woman carrying child. Make tea." Sophia eyed the pouch with cautious interest. In Boston, she had access to reputable doctors and midwives who had guided her through the early months of pregnancy. Out here, this Cherokee healer represented her only hope of medical knowledge. "What kind of medicine?" she asked, unwilling to blindly consume unknown substances. Nathan's expression remained impassive, but approval flickered in his dark eyes at her question. "Raspberry leaf strengthens womb. Nettle brings iron for blood. Chamomile calms spirit." He pointed to each dried herb as he named it. "Safe for child, used by Cherokee women for many generations." The herbs he described sounded familiar. Sophia recalled the midwife in Boston recommending raspberry leaf tea, though she had called it by a different name. This coincidence helped ease her wariness. "Thank you," she said, reaching for the pouch. "My name is Sophia Miller." Nathan nodded, once in acknowledgement. "Sophia, who carries child, needs meat to strengthen blood. I bring deer when storm passes." He glanced at her swollen ankles, visible beneath the hem of her dress. "When child comes." 4 weeks, according to the midwife in Boston, Sophia replied, unconsciously resting her hand on her belly, "though it may be sooner now." Nathan's brow furrowed slightly. "Winter birth dangerous without proper shelter. This place good for nights, not for child-bringing." He seemed to consider something before continuing. "My winter camp 3 miles north, sturdier, warmer. When storm ends, you come." The offer stunned Sophia. She had expected temporary assistance. At most, not an invitation to this man's home. "Why would you help me? Most of your people have suffered terribly at the hands of mine." Nathan was silent for so long that Sophia thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of personal history. 15 winters ago, Cherokee woman carrying child was caught in blizzard while gathering late herbs. White trapper family sheltered her, helped bring child safely. He met Sophia's gaze directly. "That child was my sister's. Some debts must be repaid, even when owed by others." The simple explanation, a balance being restored to the world, made more sense to Sophia than any elaborate justification might have. This was not about her specifically, but about maintaining harmony in a universe where kindness and cruelty both demanded reciprocation. "I accept your offer," she said quietly, "and I am grateful." Nathan nodded, satisfied with the exchange. Before departing, he demonstrated how to prepare the herbal tea properly and showed her where he had stored additional food, dried berries and more rabbit meat, in a small cache beneath a loose stone in the shelter wall. "Rest today. Save strength," he advised. "I return tomorrow with more wood." After he left, Sophia prepared the herbal tea as instructed. The brew had an earthy flavor that she found not unpleasant, particularly when sweetened with a few of the dried berries. Almost immediately, she felt the tight muscles in her lower back begin to relax. The storm intensified throughout the day, wind driving snow through the forest with such force that it created drifts several feet high around the shelter entrance. Sophia maintained the fire carefully, conserving the precious firewood while ensuring sufficient warmth. The physical demands of survival left little time for the grief that had been her constant companion since Thomas's death. Though occasionally, when adding wood to the fire or preparing food, she found herself imagining him beside her, offering encouragement. "You always said I was stronger than I knew," she whispered to his memory as she melted snow for drinking water. "I hope you were right." That night, as darkness enveloped the forest and the storm continued its assault, Sophia experienced the first real contraction of labor, a band of pain tightening across her abdomen with unmistakable purpose. The sensation passed quickly, but left her wide-eyed with alarm. The baby wasn't due for weeks. It was too soon. Remembering what the Boston midwife had told her about false labor, Sophia tried to remain calm. First pregnancies often gave warning, signs weeks before actual delivery. Still, she sipped more of the raspberry leaf tea, recalling that it was specifically meant to prepare the womb. An hour passed before another contraction arrived, stronger than the first. Sophia began counting, the minutes between each occurrence, growing increasingly concerned as they established a pattern, irregular but undeniable. By midnight, the contractions were coming every 20 to 30 minutes, each one slightly more intense than the last. "Not yet," she pleaded, rubbing her belly. "Please, not during a blizzard in a hollow tree," whether from her pleas or the herbal tea. The contractions gradually spaced further apart and diminished in strength. By dawn, they had subsided entirely, leaving Sophia exhausted but relieved. Nevertheless, the warning was clear. The child would not wait much longer. The second day of the storm brought unexpected challenges. A branch from a neighboring pine crashed down near the entrance, partially blocking it and allowing snow to accumulate inside. Sophia spent precious energy clearing the obstruction, her fingers growing numb despite multiple layers of gloves. The exertion brought a return of the contraction-like pains, though milder than before. Nathan arrived as promised, materializing through the swirling snow like a spirit. He took in the situation immediately, the fallen branch, Sophia's exhaustion, the signs of premature labor she reluctantly described. "Child responds to mother's distress," he explained, efficiently rebuilding the entrance to better protect against the elements. "Forest knows winter is time of waiting, not birthing. Your body fights two battles, survival and child-bringing." From a pouch at his waist, he produced new herbs, different from the previous days. "Sleep medicine," he said, showing her how to prepare it. "Rest today. Tomorrow's storm ends, then we travel to better shelter." The sleeping draught worked effectively, allowing Sophia to achieve the deep rest her body desperately needed. She slept through most of the day, waking only when necessary to tend the fire or eat small portions of the provisions Nathan had provided. By the third morning, the storm had spent its fury. Sunlight filtered through the trees, reflecting blindingly off the transformed landscape. Snow covered everything, smoothing the forest's rough contours into gentle shapes that belied the deadly cold they represented. Nathan arrived earlier than on previous days, carrying snowshoes crafted from bent wood and rawhide. For walking on deep snow, he explained, helping Sophia secure them to her boots and demonstrating the altered gait required for their use. "How far did you say your camp was?" Sophia asked, apprehension building as she contemplated the journey ahead. 3 miles, Nathan replied. "Difficult with child weight, but necessary. More storms come soon. Today, clear path is offered by spirits. Must accept." Before departing, Sophia gathered her few possessions, Thomas's compass, the cooking pot, the remaining food, and her bundle of extra clothing. Nathan fashioned a walking stick to help her balance with the unfamiliar snowshoes. The journey proved even more challenging than Sophia had anticipated. Despite the snowshoes preventing her from sinking completely, each step required lifting her feet higher than normal, placing tremendous strain on her already taxed body. Nathan set a deliberately slow pace, frequently pausing to allow her rest. "Your strength surprises," he commented during one such break, genuine respect evident in his voice. "Many would have surrendered to forest after abandonment." Sophia leaned heavily on her walking stick, breath forming clouds in the frigid air. "I have no choice," she replied simply. "My child deserves a chance at life." Nathan's usually stoic expression softened momentarily. Choice always exists, even choosing to continue when path seems impossible. That is strongest choice. With those words echoing in her mind, Sophia pressed onward, one painful step at a time, toward the promise of shelter and the hope of survival. By midday, Sophia's strength was flagging. Despite Nathan's carefully planned rest periods, the journey through knee-deep snow had taken its toll. Every muscle ached, and worrying twinges in her lower back signaled that the baby remained restless. The brightness of sun-reflected snow had given her a pounding headache, and her lips had cracked from the dry winter air. "How much further?" she managed between labored breaths during their latest pause. Nathan studied her condition with the critical eye of a healer. "Less than mile now, but you need rest longer." He gestured to a fallen log cleared of snow. "Sit. Drink water." Gratefully, Sophia eased herself onto the makeshift seat. As she sipped from the water skin Nathan offered, she noticed his attention. Shifting to the forest behind them, his expression suddenly alert. "What is it?" she asked, instantly concerned. "Tracks following," he replied, his voice lowered. "Men, 3, maybe 4, with rifles." Fear shot through Sophia like ice water. "The Prescotts?" Nathan shook his head. "Not wagon people. These come from east. Heavy boots. Military maybe, or hunters." His expression darkened. "Bad men sometimes. Use winter to hunt Cherokee. Government bounties still paid in some territories, though officially ended." The implications chilled Sophia more deeply than the winter air. Native hunters would be familiar with tracking in these conditions. If they were following Nathan, "They're hunting you," she realized aloud. "And I'm slowing you down." "Perhaps. Hunting, perhaps not," Nathan replied, his tone deliberately neutral, "but hurry now important." With renewed urgency, they resumed their journey. Nathan adjusted their path, leading them through denser portions of the forest where overhanging evergreens had prevented snow from accumulating as deeply. The going was slightly easier, but the tension radiating from her guide transferred to Sophia, making each sound in the forest, a branch creaking under snow weight, ice cracking on a distant tree, seem ominous. After another hour of travel, the forest began to thin, revealing a small valley nestled between protective ridges. Nathan pointed toward a barely visible structure tucked against the southern ridge. "Winter camp," he explained, "hidden from valley trails, safe from storm winds." As they approached, Sophia could make out more details. Unlike the crude temporary shelters she had imagined, this was a substantial dwelling, partially built into the hillside with a stone foundation and sturdy log walls. A stone chimney emerged from one side, wisps of smoke suggesting an active hearth within. Near the structure stood a smaller outbuilding that appeared to be a storehouse or smokehouse. "You live here alone?" Sophia asked, surprised by the size. "And permanence of the dwelling. Winter hunting camp," Nathan clarified, "used by my family for many generations. Now just me during hunting season." A shadow passed across his features. "Most of clan moved west with forced relocation. I remain as healer for those who hide in mountains." Before Sophia could inquire further, Nathan suddenly stiffened, his hand raised for silence. In the stillness that followed, Sophia heard it. Into the distant sound of voices, men calling to each other through the forest. "Inside quickly," Nathan urged, supporting her arm as they covered the final distance to the cabin. The interior of the dwelling surprised Sophia with its craftsmanship and comfort. A central hearth provided both warmth and cooking capability, with smoke rising through a cleverly designed chimney system. Furs lined the walls for additional insulation, and handcrafted furniture, a table, chairs, and a platform bed covered in deerskins, offered pragmatic comfort. Dried herbs and meat hung from ceiling beams, while pottery vessels containing various supplies lined shelves built into the walls. Nathan immediately secured the door, which Sophia noted was unusually thick and reinforced with metal bands. "Rest. Now," he instructed, guiding her to the bed, "I check who follows." "If they're dangerous," Sophia began, her concern evident, "shouldn't we both hide?" Nathan's expression remained impassive, but something like grim humor flickered in his eyes. "Hiding woman with child difficult. Better to know enemy first." He pulled a worn leather case from beneath the bed, revealing an old but well-maintained Pennsylvania long rifle. "This speak, if necessary." As Nathan disappeared through a back entrance, Sophia hadn't initially noticed. She sank onto the bed, grateful for the relative comfort after days of inadequate rest. The warmth of the hearth eased her aching muscles, and for the first time since, being abandoned, she felt truly safe. The cabin's walls, solid and reassuring, stood between her and the wilderness that had nearly claimed her life. Her momentary peace was disrupted by the baby shifting vigorously, followed by a contraction, stronger than those she had experienced in the hollow tree. Sophia breathed through it, using techniques the Boston midwife had taught her, but anxiety resurged. The journey had accelerated things. The baby was responding to her physical stress. When the contraction passed, Sophia explored her surroundings, more thoroughly, seeking distraction from her concerns. Near the hearth, she discovered a wooden cradle, beautifully carved with symbols she didn't recognize. Its presence in a hunting cabin used by a solitary man puzzled her. Other details suggested this was more than just a temporary shelter. Cherokee artifacts mixed with items of obvious European origin, hand-forged cooking utensils, a cast-iron Dutch oven, even several books stacked on a small table. One volume lay open, its pages covered in neat handwritten English alongside what appeared to be Cherokee syllabary. Sophia was examining this unexpected library when Nathan returned, his expression grave. "Bounty hunters," he confirmed. "4 men, following my tracks from root shelter." He secured the back entrance before continuing. "They saw 2 trails. Know I not alone." "What will they do?" Sophia asked, fear constricting her throat. "Search area before dark. Hunting Cherokee brings gold. Finding white woman with Cherokee brings questions." He checked the rifle's mechanism with practiced hands. "They must not find this place. Can we hide somewhere else? Further into the mountains?" Even as she suggested it, Sophia knew it was impossible. Her condition wouldn't allow further travel, especially with armed men searching the forest. Nathan shook his head. "Storm returns tonight. They seek shelter soon." He gestured toward the valley. "Old trapper cabin 2 miles east. They likely go there." As if confirming his prediction, the distant voices grew fainter, moving away from their location. Still, Nathan remained vigilant, watching through a narrow window slit until satisfied the immediate danger had passed. Turning his attention back to Sophia, he noticed her discomfort immediately. "Child moves toward birth," he observed, not a question, but a statement of fact. Sophia nodded, unable to deny the increasing frequency of contractions. "The journey was difficult. I think it started, though still early." Nathan accepted this development with characteristic calm. Many days sometimes between first signs and child's arrival. He moved to one of the herb bundles hanging from the ceiling, selecting several different plants. Tea now helps prepare body without rushing child. As he prepared the medicinal brew, Sophia was struck by how competently this solitary man addressed childbirth, a domain typically reserved for midwives and women in her experience. "You've delivered babies before?" she asked, watching him measure dried herbs with precision. "Cherokee healer learns all medicine," he replied simply. "Men's ailments, women's needs, children's cures, balance important." He paused, adding more. "Wood to the fire. My grandmother was respected birth helper, taught me plant medicine for women. Not unusual among my people for men to learn such things." This information provided Sophia surprising comfort. If her child truly was coming soon, at least she wouldn't face the ordeal alone or with someone completely inexperienced. Still, the thought of giving birth in a remote cabin with bounty hunters nearby, attended only by a man she'd known for mere days, filled her with trepidation. Nathan seemed to sense her anxiety. "Fear natural before child comes," he said, handing her the prepared tea. "But fear makes birth harder. Remember breath. Remember strength that brought you through forest. Body knows ancient wisdom of bringing life." As Sophia sipped the herbal tea, milder than she expected, with hints of mint and something like honey, she found his words oddly reassuring. Her body did know what to do. Women had been giving birth in far worse circumstances for millennia. She would endure whatever came. Outside, the light began to fade as winter's early dusk descended on the mountains. Nathan lit several animal fat lamps, their gentle glow creating a surprisingly cozy atmosphere within the cabin. He prepared a simple but nourishing meal of venison stew that restored some of Sophia's depleted energy. As they ate, the first snowflakes of the predicted storm drifted past the window. Soon, a steady curtain of white obscured the valley below, and the wind rose to a mournful howl around the sturdy cabin walls. "Storm good for us," Nathan observed. "Covers tracks, keeps hunters. In shelter," he glanced at Sophia's abdomen, "gives child time to decide, come now or wait for calmer day." Within the cabin's protective embrace, surrounded by the skills and knowledge of a healer from a culture not her own, Sophia Miller prepared herself for whatever the long winter night might bring. The night deepened as the storm intensified, nature's fury providing an unexpected sanctuary from human threats. Sophia dozed intermittently, waking to occasional contractions that remained irregular, uncomfortable but not yet demanding immediate attention. Nathan maintained a watchful presence, alternating between tending the fire, preparing remedies, and checking the perimeter of the cabin when the wind temporarily abated. During one such wakeful period, Sophia's attention returned to the beautifully crafted cradle near the hearth. The question that had formed earlier finally found voice. "The cradle," she began, gesturing toward it. "It seems out of place in a hunting cabin used by a single man." Nathan's hands paused in their work of grinding herbs. Something flickered across his face, a shadow of memory, perhaps, or old pain. "It was carved for my son," he said finally, "many winters ago." The simple statement contained volumes of unspoken history. Sophia hesitated, uncertain whether to inquire further. "You don't need to tell me," she offered. "I didn't mean to pry into painful memories." Nathan resumed his methodical grinding. "Pain not erased by silence," he replied. "Sometimes story wants to be told." He set aside his work and added a log to the fire, watching the flames rise before. Continuing, I had wife once, Sarah, daughter of Cherokee mother and Scottish trader. She knew both worlds, moved between them like deer through forest. Pride mingled with sorrow in his voice. When soldiers came with removal orders, we fled. To mountains, instead of walking Trail of Tears west, Sarah carried our child. Sophia listened intently, recognizing the rare privilege of hearing this proud man speak of his personal history. Winter that year came early, like this one. We reached this hunting camp of my ancestors, prepared for child's arrival. Nathan's gaze fixed on the cradle. I carved this while waiting, putting protection symbols of Cherokee and Christian faiths both, as Sarah wished. His silence stretched long enough that Sophia thought the story had ended, but eventually he continued. Birth was difficult. Child came, strong boy with his mother's eyes, but bleeding wouldn't stop. Nathan's voice remained steady, though. The pain was evident in his controlled delivery. I used every healing plant known to Cherokee medicine, prayed to old gods and knew nothing worked. The familiar tragedy, childbirth's danger claiming mothers throughout human history, hung heavy in the cabin air. Sarah lived 3 days after son's birth, named him Jonathan for her father. He lived 6 more days before joining her. Nathan's hand rested briefly on the cradle's edge. I buried them together on ridge above cabin, where morning sun reaches first. Sophia's throat tightened with empathy. How long ago? 12 winters, Nathan replied. I continued as healer for those who remained hidden in mountains, learned more medicine from books, from traveling doctors who didn't care I was Cherokee. He gestured to the unexpected library Sophia had noticed earlier. Studied bleeding sickness especially. Too late for Sarah, but perhaps not for others. The revelation cast Nathan's willingness to help her in new light. This wasn't merely repaying an old debt as he had claimed, it was something more profound. Every pregnant woman in distress perhaps carried Sarah's ghost for him. Another chance to change an outcome he couldn't alter 12 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss, Sophia said simply, words inadequate, but sincere. Nathan acknowledged her sympathy with a slight nod. Life continues, even after great sorrow. He glanced meaningfully at her swollen belly. Your child brings new story to world. Their conversation was interrupted by a much stronger contraction that had Sophia gasping and clutching her abdomen. This one felt different, a powerful wave that started in her back and wrapped around to her front, lasting nearly a minute. Nathan observed her reaction carefully. Labor strengthens, he noted. Still time between, but child decides to come. During storm. As the contraction subsided, leaving Sophia breathless, a new sound penetrated the howling wind. Distant voices and the bark of a dog. Nathan moved swiftly to the window slit, watching intently. Hunters move through storm, he reported, his voice tight with concern. Torches visible through trees, coming this direction. Why would they leave shelter in this weather? Sophia asked, fear renewing despite her exhaustion. Dog caught scent perhaps, or shelter leaked, drove them out. Nathan's expression darkened. Does not matter why. Matters only that they come. He retrieved the Pennsylvania rifle, checking its priming with practiced efficiency. You stay silent. I lead them away from cabin. No, Sophia protested, struggling to sit upright. You can't go out there. The storm, they're armed. Another contraction cut off her objections, this one following more quickly than expected. Nathan regarded her with calm resolve. Cannot shoot from here. Too dangerous with child coming. He selected several items from his stores, a water skin, pemmican, flint and steel. Cabin hidden against ridge, unless standing directly before it. I draw them east, away from here. And if they catch you? Sophia demanded, breathing through the subsiding pain. Not easy to catch Cherokee in forest even with dog. A hint of pride colored his voice. Many places to hide, to double back. Storm helps conceal tracks. Unwilling to simply watch him walk into danger, Sophia tried another approach. What if the baby comes while you're gone? I can't do this alone. Nathan paused, acknowledging the validity of her concern. After a moment's consideration, he moved to a small chest near the bed, withdrawing several items which he arranged within Sophia's reach. Clean cloths, a sharp knife, sinew thread, a pottery bowl of rendered fat, and various packets of herbs labeled with symbols. If water breaks and child follows quickly, use these. He explained each item's purpose and use with concise precision. Child knows how to be born. Body knows how to birth. Fear is greatest enemy. The voices outside grew marginally louder, though still distant, perhaps half a mile away, but approaching steadily. Sophia could now distinguish individual shouts as the men called to each other over the storm's noise. "The search pattern suggests dog loss scent in snow," Nathan observed, moving in widening circles from trapper cabin. Making a swift decision, he gathered additional supplies, including what appeared to be pre-prepared smoke bombs, crafted from pine resin and particular herbs. "These mask scent from dog," he explained. "Old Cherokee hunting trick. Confuses animal. Tracking." He wrapped a deerskin coat more securely around himself and moved toward the back entrance. "Bar door after I leave. Open only for my special knock. 3 quick, 2 slow." He demonstrated the pattern on the table edge. "How long will you be gone?" Sophia asked, another contraction building as she spoke. "Until hunters leave area or until child arrives?" Nathan's expression softened momentarily. "Whichever comes first. Trust yourself if alone. Women stronger than men in birth-bringing." With those final instructions, Nathan slipped through the back entrance and disappeared into the storm. Sophia immediately barred the door as directed, then returned to the main room where the fire cast dancing shadows against the log walls. Left alone in the remote cabin while labor intensified and armed men searched the surrounding forest, Sophia found her thoughts turning to Thomas. What would he think of her current circumstances? His proper Boston wife, taking shelter with a Cherokee healer, preparing to give birth in a mountain cabin during a winter storm while bounty hunters prowled. "Outside, you always said the frontier would change us," she whispered to his memory. "I don't think either of us imagined how much." Another contraction seized her, stronger than the last. When it passed, Sophia methodically arranged Nathan's birthing supplies beside the bed. Whatever happened next, she was determined to face it with the same courage that had brought her through. The wilderness alive. Outside, the storm's intensity multiplied, wind shrieking around the cabin corners and snow accumulating in drifts that would soon reach the window's height. The distant voices grew fainter, then disappeared entirely beneath nature's overwhelming chorus. Whether the hunters had changed direction, given up their search, or simply couldn't be heard over the storm, remained impossible to determine. Sophia paced the cabin floor during the lulls between contractions, one hand supporting her lower back, while the other rested protectively on her belly. The baby seemed extraordinarily active now, shifting and turning as if seeking the optimal position for entry into the world. "Not yet," she urged, both to herself and the child within. "Give Nathan time to return. Give the hunters time to leave." But her body, operating on ancient imperatives beyond conscious control, continued its inexorable progression toward birth. As midnight approached, marked by a small pendulum clock among Nathan's possessions, Sophia's water broke in a sudden rush, soaking her clothing and the cabin floor. The development triggered contractions of dramatically increased intensity, causing her to cry out involuntarily before biting her lip to maintain silence. The hunters might be gone, drawn away by Nathan's diversionary tactics, but certainty was impossible. Prudence demanded continued quiet despite the growing urge to vocalize through the pain. Alone in the wilderness cabin, surrounded by a raging blizzard with potential enemies nearby, and her only ally deliberately drawing danger away from her, Sophia Miller began the final stage of labor, transforming from pregnant widow to mother in the most challenging circumstances imaginable. Time lost all meaning as Sophia surrendered to the ancient rhythm of childbirth. Each contraction built like a wave, cresting in nearly unbearable intensity before gradually receding, leaving precious moments to gather strength for the next assault. She moved instinctively between positions, kneeling, squatting, leaning, against the rough-hewn table, seeking whatever brought the slightest relief. Nathan's careful preparations proved invaluable. During brief respites between contractions, Sophia sipped the herbal tea he had left steeping by the fire, its properties helping to ease the worst pangs while providing vital strength. The cabin remained secure against both storm and potential human threats, its thick walls muffling her occasional cries when the pain grew too intense to bear silently. As the labor progressed, Sophia found herself drawing on unexpected reserves of determination. The journey that had brought her to this remote cabin, the grief of Thomas's death, the abandonment by the Prescotts, the desperate nights alone in the wilderness, had forged something new within her. Each challenge survived had strengthened. Her resolve, each obstacle overcome, had proven her more capable than she had ever imagined. "I can do this," she whispered through gritted teeth as another contraction built. "I will do this." Outside, the blizzard reached its zenith, wind and snow combining in a howling maelstrom that erased all other sounds. Whether Nathan still attempted to lead the hunters away or had sought his own shelter from the storm's fury remained impossible to know. Sophia could only focus on the immediate demands of her body as it worked to bring new life into the world. Near what she estimated to be 2 in the morning, the urge to push became overwhelming. Following instincts as old as humanity, Sophia positioned herself near the bed, kneeling while supporting her upper body on its edge. The cradle carved for Nathan's son stood nearby, its presence both poignant and encouraging, a symbol of hope despite past tragedy. "Come now, little one," she encouraged between labored breaths. "It's time to meet your mother." The next contraction brought searing pressure and the distinct sensation of the baby moving downward. Sophia pushed with all her strength, a primal sound escaping her throat despite attempts to remain quiet. 3 more powerful contractions followed in rapid succession, each bringing progress she could feel but not see. After the 4th push, Sophia reached down and felt the baby's head crowning. An indescribable moment of wonder amid the pain. One more tremendous effort brought the head fully into the world, the shoulders following with the next contraction. With a final push and a rush of fluid, her child slipped completely free of her body and into her waiting hands. A girl, a perfectly formed daughter with a cap of dark hair, her tiny face scrunched in protest at the sudden change in environment. For one heart-stopping moment, the baby remained silent, and Sophia felt panic rising. Then came the indignant wail, strong and vital, announcing her arrival to the empty cabin. Moving with instinctive precision despite her exhaustion, Sophia cleared the baby's mouth and nose with her finger, as she had seen midwives do, then used one of Nathan's clean cloths to wipe the birth fluids from the newborn's skin. She tied and cut the umbilical cord with the implements he had provided, wrapped her daughter in the softest deerskin, and held her close to share body warmth. "Hello, Elizabeth," she whispered, the name she and Thomas had chosen if their child was a girl. "Welcome to this world, little fighter." The afterbirth delivered without complication, Sophia managed to clean herself and change into the spare clothing from her bundle. The physical ordeal left her trembling with exhaustion, but the rush of love for the tiny being in her arms provided a different kind of strength. Moving carefully to the hearth, she added wood to build the fire higher, ensuring the cabin remained warm enough for her newborn. Elizabeth had settled against her mother's chest, her earlier cries subsiding into occasional whimpers as she adjusted to existence outside the womb. "Your father would have adored you," Sophia told her, tracing a gentle finger along the perfect curve of her daughter's cheek. "He had such dreams for us in this new land." Her voice caught on unexpected emotion. "Different dreams than this, perhaps, but we'll find our way." As dawn approached, bringing faint grey light through the snow-crusted window, Sophia managed to position herself on the bed with Elizabeth securely nestled in the crook of her arm. Despite her intention to remain vigilant, the profound exhaustion of childbirth soon pulled her into deep sleep. She woke with a start to the sound of the promised knock, 3 quick, 2 slow, at the back entrance. Disoriented momentarily, Sophia clutched Elizabeth closer before remembering Nathan's signal. "Who's there?" she called, her voice hoarse from exertion. "Nathan," came the reply, muffled by the thick door. "Hunter's gone. Safe now." Relief flooded through her as she carefully rose, cradling Elizabeth securely while moving to unbar the door. Nathan entered quickly, bringing a blast of cold air and snowflakes before securing the entrance behind him. His clothing was crusted with ice, his face bearing signs of extreme exposure to the elements, but his eyes remained alert and assessing. Those eyes widened slightly at the sight of the bundle in Sophia's arms. "Child came," he stated, a hint of concern breaking through his usual reserve. "You birthed alone." "Elizabeth arrived safely," Sophia confirmed, adjusting the wrap to reveal her daughter's face. "Your preparations helped more than you can know." Nathan approached cautiously, his gaze softening as he observed the newborn. With gentle movements that belied his considerable size and strength, he examined the baby without taking her from Sophia's arms, checking her color, respiration, and reflexes with experienced precision. "Strong girl child," he pronounced, satisfaction evident in his voice. "Good size despite coming early." He turned his attention to Sophia. "And mother, bleeding controlled?" Sophia nodded, touched by his professional concern despite what must have been his own ordeal in the blizzard. "Everything happened as you said it might. I remembered your instructions." Nathan nodded approvingly, then moved to remove his frozen outer garments. As he hung them near the fire to thaw, Sophia noticed a dark stain spreading across his left sleeve. "You're injured," she gasped, suddenly registering what exhaustion and childbirth had prevented her from seeing immediately. Nathan glanced at his arm with detached interest. "Bullet grazed only. Hunter shot at movement in trees. Poor aim in storm." He pulled back the torn fabric to reveal a shallow furrow across his upper arm, bloodied but not life-threatening. "Let me help," Sophia insisted, carefully placing Elizabeth in the cradle before retrieving Nathan's medical supplies. The least she could do was tend his wound after all he had done for her. As she cleaned and bandaged his arm, Nathan recounted the night's events in his characteristically economical style. The hunters had indeed followed the false trail he created, venturing far enough east to become thoroughly disoriented when the storm intensified. Their dog, more sensible than its masters, had eventually led them back toward the trapper's cabin rather than continuing a futile search. "They leave mountains when storm passes," Nathan predicted. "Bounty not worth freezing death." With the immediate danger past and Elizabeth sleeping peacefully in the cradle, Sophia felt the full impact of the past days crashing upon her. The journey through deep snow, the terror of the hunter's approach, the intensity of childbirth, all combined in a wave of delayed reaction that left her shaking. Nathan recognized the symptoms immediately. "Shock comes after danger passes," he explained, guiding her back to the bed. "Body fights, then trembles when fight done." He prepared a warm drink different from the previous medicinal teas. This, one smelling of mint and honey. Rest now, both safe. My turn to watch. As Sophia sipped the soothing liquid, a question that had formed during the long hours of labor finally found voice. What happens when the weather clears? Elizabeth and I can't impose on your kindness indefinitely. Nathan considered this as he tended the fire. Winter in mountains lasts many more weeks, not safe to travel with newborn until paths clear. He gestured toward the well-stocked cabin. Provisions sufficient for 3, no imposition. And after winter? Sophia pressed, needing to understand what future might await her and her daughter. The original plan, joining Thomas in establishing a trading post, had died with him. The prospect of continuing alone to Missouri Territory with an infant seemed impossible, yet returning to Boston would mean admitting defeat and facing the pitying stares of former friends. Nathan seemed to understand the deeper question behind her words. Spring brings choices, he said simply. Cherokee say rushing river eventually finds path to ocean. Your path will reveal itself when time right. Exhaustion finally overcame Sophia's concerns about the future. With Elizabeth safely sleeping in the cradle beside her and Nathan standing guard against any remaining threats, she surrendered to much-needed rest. Outside, the storm gradually subsided, leaving the mountain world transformed beneath a pristine blanket of snow. Inside the cabin, an unlikely family, Boston widow, Cherokee healer, and newborn frontier child, found temporary sanctuary from both natural elements and human prejudice, their lives intertwined by circumstance and survival. The days following, Elizabeth's birth established a new rhythm in the mountain cabin. Nathan's experience with infants proved invaluable as he guided Sophia through the challenges of early motherhood in frontier conditions. He showed her how to create soft, absorbent diapers from rabbit skins, prepared special teas to encourage her milk production, and crafted a secure sling that allowed her to carry Elizabeth close while keeping her hands free for necessary tasks. Life settled into peaceful routine despite the harsh winter conditions outside. Sophia gradually regained her strength, taking on increasingly more cabin duties as her body healed. Nathan continued to hunt during brief, clear periods between storms, returning with rabbits, wild turkey, and once, a young deer that provided meat for several weeks. You've been so kind to us, Sophia commented one evening as they shared a meal near the hearth, Elizabeth sleeping contentedly in her cradle. I can never repay your generosity. Nathan looked up from mending a snowshoe, his expression thoughtful. Cherokee do not measure kindness with payment. Life demands balance, giving when others need, receiving when we need. He set aside his work. But if you wish to contribute, I can teach skills useful for mountain survival. Thus began Sophia's education in frontier life under a most unexpected tutor. Each day brought new knowledge, how to identify edible plants even beneath snow cover, how to follow game trails, how to preserve meat without salt, how to read weather changes in cloud patterns and animal behavior. Her soft hands grew calloused, but capable, her city-bred sensibilities giving way to practical wilderness wisdom. My father would be scandalized, she laughed one afternoon while scraping a deer hide, Elizabeth watching from her sling. His properly raised daughter, living, in a cabin with a Cherokee man, learning to tan hides. Nathan continued sharpening his hunting knife without looking up. Many white women captured by tribes in war refused return when rescued, found different freedom in native life. He tested the blade's edge with his thumb. Not all civilization. Improvements make better lives. This observation resonated with Sophia more deeply than she expected. Boston society had certainly offered comforts and refinements absent in this mountain cabin, but it had also confined women within rigid expectations of behavior and purpose. Here, necessity demanded she develop strength and skills she would never have discovered in her previous life. Thomas wanted to build something new on the frontier, she mused, continuing her work on the hide. Something that took the best of civilization while embracing the freedom of this land. Her voice softened. I think he would approve of what I'm learning, though perhaps not the circumstances. Wise man, Nathan commented. New world needs new thinking, not just old ways in new places. As January yielded to February, the winter maintained its grip on the mountains, though the days gradually lengthened and occasional thaws hinted at eventual spring. Elizabeth thrived despite the harsh conditions, gaining weight and responding, with increasing awareness to her surroundings. Her dark eyes, so like Thomas's, studied everything with apparent fascination, particularly Nathan, whose deep voice seemed to captivate her attention whenever he spoke. During this period, Sophia learned more about Nathan's unusual history. Unlike many Cherokee who had remained hidden in these mountains, he straddled both worlds with remarkable adaptability. His father had been a respected tribal healer, but had also formed a cautious friendship with a frontier doctor, leading to Nathan's unique combination of traditional and European medical knowledge. Father believed wisdom belongs to no single people, Nathan explained while demonstrating how to create a poultice for Elizabeth's minor diaper rash. Many paths to healing. Cherokee use plant known to white doctors as witch hazel for same purpose, different names. This philosophical openness extended beyond medicine. In addition to the books Sophia had noticed earlier, Nathan possessed maps, astronomical charts, and even a battered copy of Shakespeare's works. His literacy in both English and Cherokee allowed him to document traditional knowledge while absorbing outside perspectives, an approach that had distanced him from some traditionalists in his tribe, while making him an invaluable intermediary during increasingly tense relations with white authorities. You could have gone west with the others, Sophia observed one night as Nathan studied a star chart by lamplight. With your knowledge, you'd be valuable to any community. Nathan carefully traced a constellation before responding. Left wife and son buried here. Could not leave them alone. His voice remained steady, though Sophia detected the underlying emotion. And some Cherokee, too old, too stubborn to travel Trail of Tears, needed healer who understands both medicines. As February progressed, the bounty hunters never returned, but new concerns arose. During a clear spell, Nathan ventured further down the mountain than usual for hunting and returned with troubling news from a sympathetic trapper he had encountered. Militia companies forming in lowland settlements, he reported, his normally impassive features tight with worry. Talk of final solution to Indian problem in mountains before spring planting. Governor signed new removal order. But President Jackson's Indian Removal Act was years ago, Sophia protested. I thought the official relocations were complete. Official, yes. Reality, no. Nathan stoked the fire with more force than necessary. Some Cherokee hide successful. Government finds embarrassing. New militia, not regular army. Local men paid for each Indian captured or killed. The implications chilled Sophia despite the cabin's warmth. They're coming here, to these mountains, when snow melts enough for horses on mountain trails. April, perhaps. Nathan's expression revealed rare uncertainty. Need to consider options before then. This development cast a shadow over their previously peaceful coexistence. Nathan began scouting more frequently, establishing alternate shelters and cache sites throughout his territory. He taught Sophia recognition signals and emergency procedures with increasing urgency. If militia comes while I hunt, hide here, he instructed, showing her a concealed storage space beneath the cabin floor, large enough for you and Elizabeth. Contains water, food, blankets. I won't hide while you face danger alone, Sophia objected, Elizabeth sleeping against her shoulder. Not after everything you've done for us. Nathan regarded her with unexpected gentleness. Child needs mother more than mother needs pride. He placed a reassuring hand on Elizabeth's tiny back. "Promise to hide if danger comes." Reluctantly, Sophia agreed, though the prospect of cowering beneath floorboards while armed men searched for Nathan violated her growing sense of justice. The Cherokee healer had saved 2 lives that bitter winter night, arguably 3, counting Thomas's legacy in Elizabeth. The thought of repaying that debt with abandonment when he faced mortal danger himself seemed unconscionable. One snowy afternoon, in late February, while Nathan was checking his more distant traplines, Sophia discovered a locked chest partially concealed behind storage shelving. Her curiosity piqued. She searched the cabin until she found a small key hidden in the hollow handle of a cooking ladle. The chest contained documents that stunned her: land deeds, official court recognitions of Cherokee property rights, signed, treaties, and correspondence with territorial authorities dating back decades. Most significantly, she found papers establishing Nathan's legal American citizenship through his maternal grandfather's service in the Revolutionary War. A fact that should have protected him from removal orders. "These are important legal protections," she exclaimed when Nathan returned, the papers spread across the table. "Why haven't you used them?" Nathan surveyed the documents without apparent concern about her discovery. "Papers mean nothing when men with guns make law. Showed these to Marshall once. He burned copy, threatened worse if I returned." He began removing his snow-covered outer garments. "Paper rights for Indians worth less than paper they written on." "But this is different," Sophia insisted, holding up his citizenship documentation. "This establishes rights no removal order can supersede. My father had business dealings with several prominent Boston attorneys. I understand how valuable these particular protections are." Nathan regarded her with curious intensity. "You know law matters? Enough to recognize these documents would interest certain influential newspapers in the East," Sophia replied, thinking rapidly. "The Indian Removal Act has opponents, particularly among religious and abolitionist groups. Your case, a legally recognized citizen with documented property rights being hunted by bounty militia, could become a significant embarrassment to territorial authorities." For the first time since meeting him, Sophia saw Nathan genuinely surprised. "You would help create such political problem. You saved my life and my daughter's. You've shared your home and knowledge." Sophia gathered the documents carefully. Besides, Thomas believed in justice above all else. He would expect no less from his wife. A slow smile, rare and transformative, spread across Nathan's usually stoic features. "Boston woman more dangerous than militia, perhaps." The smile faded as practical considerations reasserted themselves. But how to reach newspapers, mountains still snow-locked for weeks? This practical obstacle temporarily dampened Sophia's determination, but her mind continued working on possible solutions as February gave way to March. The weather remained treacherous, with deceptive warm days followed by vicious storms that maintained winter's grip on the higher elevations. During this time, Elizabeth reached new developmental milestones, smiling responsively, holding her head steady, showing stronger recognition of both adults caring for her. These achievements provided joy amid growing concerns about the future, each small victory a reminder of what was at stake. "She will walk strong paths," Nathan observed one evening, as Elizabeth demonstrated her improving neck strength during her belly time on a soft deerskin. "Spirit shows already." Sophia nodded agreement, maternal pride mixing with growing anxiety about what spring might bring. The militia preparations Nathan had mentioned represented a threat not just to him, but potentially to Elizabeth and herself. If found living willingly with a Cherokee, she might face accusations of going native, a status that could result in her being declared unfit to mother her own child, according to the prejudices of the time. As if sensing her thoughts, Nathan spoke the reality they both recognized, but had avoided discussing directly. When trails clear enough, you should consider journey to nearest settlement. Safer for you and Elizabeth than remaining here when militia comes. The suggestion, though practical, struck Sophia like a physical blow. The mountain cabin had become more than shelter. It had become home in a way her brief time with Thomas on the trail had never achieved. More importantly, Nathan had become more than rescuer or reluctant host. He had become... what? Friend seemed inadequate for their shared experiences, partner closer but still incomplete. "And what will you do?" she asked, voicing the question that truly mattered. Nathan turned his attention to the fire, stoking it, thoughtfully before answering. "Continue as always, hide when necessary, heal those who need, wait for world to change." The simplicity of his response belied the danger it represented. Both knew that waiting for the world to change might mean years or decades of precarious existence, potentially cut short by a militia bullet or the hardships of solitary survival. That night, as a late-season snowstorm howled around the cabin corners, Sophia lay awake long after Elizabeth had fallen asleep. The approaching spring would force decisions she was not yet prepared to make, paths diverging in ways that would forever alter 3 lives brought together by wilderness and winter. March brought the first genuine signs of winter's retreat. Icicles that had hung from the cabin eaves for months began to drip steadily during daylight hours, creating musical patterns that delighted Elizabeth when Sophia held her outside to hear them. Patches of bare ground emerged on south-facing slopes, revealing dormant plants waiting to renew their cycle. Birds returned to the high country, their songs replacing winter's silence with vibrant choruses at dawn and dusk. With spring's approach came increasing tension. Nathan extended his scouting missions, sometimes staying away overnight to gather intelligence from sympathetic contacts in the foothills. Each return brought more concerning news. The militia companies were indeed organizing, with at least 60 men signed up under a particularly zealous captain named William Harding, a man known for his brutal efficiency during previous Indian removals. "Harding leads largest company," Nathan reported after one such expedition. "Former army officer who calls Cherokee vermin to be exterminated. Dangerous man believes own righteousness." Sophia, who had been mashing herbs for a poultice while Elizabeth napped, set aside her work with deliberate calm. "How much time do we have?" "Month, perhaps less. Snow melts quickly on lower trails." Nathan removed his muddy boots, evidence of the thawing conditions. "They gather supplies, horses, plan thorough search of mountains when conditions permit." As they discussed options, a solution began forming in Sophia's mind, one that addressed both Nathan's precarious situation and her own uncertain future. She waited until after their evening meal to present it, wanting to ensure the idea was fully formed. "I believe I found a path forward," she began, watching Nathan's expression carefully. "One that might secure safety for all 3 of us." Nathan's eyebrows rose slightly, inviting her to continue. "These documents," Sophia indicated the chest containing Nathan's legal papers, "could force authorities to acknowledge your rights, but only if presented properly and to the right people." She leaned forward, conviction strengthening her voice. "Thomas had business contacts in St. Louis, men with political connections and newspaper interests. If we could reach them, present your case alongside evidence of illegal militia actions." "Long journey," Nathan observed, though she noted he said "we" rather than dismissing the idea outright. "Dangerous with militia searching mountains, and white woman traveling openly with Cherokee man invites different troubles. Which is why we need a compelling story," Sophia countered, having anticipated this objection. A widow and her infant rescued by a legally recognized Cherokee citizen with documented property rights. It's exactly the kind of narrative that would interest reform-minded newspapers. Her eyes met his directly. Not just for you, but as a means to challenge the entire removal policy. Nathan studied her with new intensity. You suggest using our situation as political weapon. I suggest using truth against injustice, Sophia corrected. Your legal rights exist, but are being ignored. The militia's planned actions violate both law and basic humanity. Why not expose these contradictions to those with power to effect change? For several moments, Nathan considered silently, absently stroking the small carved bear he often worked on during evenings, a toy he was creating for Elizabeth. When he finally spoke, his words surprised her. Sarah would have suggested same, he said quietly. She believed in fighting with both weapons and words. He set the carving aside. Plan has merit, but requires preparations. Maps needed, supplies, safe route avoiding settlements hostile to Cherokee. The discussion continued late into the night, transforming from hypothetical possibility to actionable strategy. Nathan sketched rough maps of potential routes, marking dangerous areas to avoid and identifying potential allies. The most promising path would take them northwest toward the Missouri River, bypassing territorial centers where the militia organized while aiming for St. Louis, where Thomas's business associates might provide crucial assistance. Journey requires at least 3 weeks if weather favorable, Nathan calculated, his finger tracing the proposed route. Longer with infant. Must wait until Elizabeth stronger for travel, but before militia begins mountain sweep. Early April then, Sophia suggested. She'll be nearly 3 months old, and the worst spring storms should have passed. Nathan nodded agreement. Time enough to prepare properly. His expression grew serious. But Sophia must understand risks. Journey dangerous even without militia. If captured or killed, Elizabeth becomes orphan in reality, not just legal terms. The stark assessment sobered Sophia momentarily, but her determination remained unshaken. Staying brings equal danger, just delayed. At least this path offers hope beyond mere survival. She looked toward the cradle where Elizabeth slept peacefully. Besides, I want my daughter to live in a world where justice matters more than prejudice. This journey serves that greater purpose. Something shifted in Nathan's eyes, respect deepening, perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit beneath their obvious differences. Then we prepare, he said simply. The following weeks transformed the cabin into a center of careful preparation. Nathan increased his hunting efforts to create a surplus of dried meat for the journey. Sophia crafted specialized carrying equipment, adapting the baby sling Nathan had made into a more secure travel system that would protect Elizabeth from weather while keeping Sophia's hands free when needed. Together, they studied maps, discussed contingencies, and assembled the supplies necessary for wilderness travel with an infant. During this period, their partnership evolved in subtle ways. The careful distance Nathan had maintained, appropriate for a healer assisting a vulnerable woman, gave way to a more equal collaboration. Sophia noticed he began sharing more personal stories and beliefs, speaking of Cherokee traditions and his own family history with previously unvoiced detail. In turn, she found herself revealing aspects of her Boston upbringing she had never shared with anyone, including Thomas, her secret educational pursuits disguised as social visits, her dissatisfaction with society's limited expectations for women, her father's disappointment when she displayed more interest in business matters than appropriate marriageability. Thomas was different, she explained one evening while organizing supplies. He saw me as a partner, not merely a wife. That's why I agreed to this frontier adventure despite my father's objections. Nathan nodded understanding. Cherokee traditionally value women's wisdom. Clan membership passes through mother's line, not father's. Women hold property, Speak in council. A shadow crossed his features. White ways different. Sarah struggled with this. Her Scottish father believed women should remain silent in men's matters. This cultural comparison fascinated Sophia, who had received limited education about native peoples beyond common stereotypes. Yet you and Sarah built a life bridging both worlds. Tried to, Nathan corrected gently. Not always successful. Some Cherokee called us too white. Some whites called us savages, regardless of adaptation. His hands worked steadily, fashioning a waterproof covering for their journey supplies. Difficult path, belonging nowhere completely. As April approached, bringing longer days and increasingly stable weather, final preparations accelerated. Nathan cached essential supplies at strategic points along their planned route, ensuring they could travel lighter between resupply opportunities. He also arranged subtle signals with friendly contacts, both native and sympathetic whites, who might provide assistance or warning about militia movements. One particularly significant addition to their plans came when Nathan returned from scouting with a surprise, a sturdy mountain pony he had obtained through trade with a Cherokee family preparing to move west. Safer travel with horse, he explained, leading the shaggy, sure-footed animal to a newly constructed lean-to beside the cabin. Elizabeth and supplies can ride, we walk alongside. The pony, which they named Maple for her reddish-brown coloring, proved gentle with Elizabeth, standing patiently while Sophia practiced securing the special carrier Nathan designed to hold the infant safely during travel. This unexpected resource significantly improved their chances of completing the journey successfully, allowing faster progress while reducing physical strain. As their departure date grew closer, Sophia found herself experiencing conflicting emotions. The cabin that had initially been merely emergency shelter had become home during these winter months. The forest that had once seemed threatening now felt familiar, its seasonal patterns and wildlife recognized as neighbors rather than dangers. Most significantly, the working partnership with Nathan had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated or named, but which contained unmistakable elements of deep mutual respect and growing affection. "Will you miss this place?" she asked Nathan one evening as they stood outside the cabin, watching the last light fade from the mountain peaks. Elizabeth, now alert for longer periods, observed the darkening sky from her mother's arms with apparent fascination. Nathan considered the question with characteristic thoughtfulness. Miss security of known territory, yes. Miss memories here, yes. His gaze moved toward the ridge where his wife and son lay buried. But Cherokee teaching says we walk forward path, not backward. Future matters more than past. He reached out carefully, allowing Elizabeth to grasp his finger with her increasingly coordinated hands. Future now includes Elizabeth. Her safety, worth leaving familiar ground. The simple statement contained layers of meaning that Sophia recognized but did not press. His decision to accompany them to St. Louis, rather than simply pointing the way, represented a profound shift in priorities. From solitary guardian of his ancestral territory to protector of a makeshift family formed through circumstance and mutual need. 2 nights before their planned departure, as Sophia performed final checks of their carefully packed supplies, she found herself returning to a question that had lingered unasked throughout their preparations. After St. Louis, if we succeed in presenting your case, what then? She asked, her hands stilling on the bundle of baby clothing she had been organizing. Nathan looked up from the moccasins he was treating with protective oils for the journey. Depends on outcome. If authorities acknowledge rights, perhaps return here with official protection. His expression remained carefully neutral. If not, continue west, perhaps. Many Cherokee establishing new communities beyond current territories. And Elizabeth and I, Sophia pressed gently, What place do you see for us in either outcome? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken possibilities. Nathan set aside his work, giving the matter his full attention. Choice belongs to Sophia, he said finally. Boston society waits if you wish return. Or, he paused, seeming to select his next words with particular care, journey continues together if you prefer. Elizabeth needs mother's wisdom, father's protection, whether that father figure is memory of Thomas or... He left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear. With that simple statement, the parameters of their future clarified. Not a definitive decision, but acknowledgement of possibilities beyond the immediate journey, possibilities that included a continued shared path if circumstances and personal choices aligned. Let's reach St. Louis first, Sophia replied softly. The future will reveal itself when ready, as you've taught me. As April's first week brought warming temperatures and increasingly clear trails, the three unlikely companions, Boston widow, Cherokee healer, and infant daughter of two worlds, prepared to leave the mountain sanctuary that had sheltered them. Through winter's fury, whatever awaited them beyond the high country, militia threats, arduous travel, uncertain reception in St. Louis, they would face together, bound by experiences no conventional relationship could match. Dawn of their departure. Day broke clear and promising, the mountain air carrying the subtle fragrance of early spring growth and renewed possibility. The journey ahead remained fraught with danger and uncertainty, but as Nathan secured the last of their supplies to Maple's patient back, his eyes met Sophia's with quiet confidence. "Ready?" he asked simply, with Elizabeth secured against her. Chest and Thomas's compass in her pocket, Sophia nodded. "Ready." They left the cabin as they had found it, prepared for future need, with supplies for emergency use by any traveler who might seek its shelter. Nathan paused only briefly at the ridge overlooking his family's resting place, offering what Sophia recognized as a traditional blessing before turning resolutely toward the path leading down from their mountain haven. The first steps of their journey took them into an uncertain future, but one facing forward rather than back. A small family created not by conventional bonds, but by survival, respect, and growing love in the face of wilderness and prejudice. The descent from the mountain sanctuary proved more challenging than anticipated. Spring thaws had transformed formerly frozen paths into treacherous mudslides, while weakened snow bridges occasionally collapsed under pressure, requiring careful testing of each step. Nathan led the way, probing suspicious terrain with a sturdy walking stick, while Sophia followed with Elizabeth, securely bundled against unexpected weather changes. Maple the pony brought up the rear, laden with their essential supplies, but still capable of navigating the difficult terrain with surprising agility. By midday they had descended nearly 2,000 feet in elevation, the forest around them, gradually transforming from predominantly evergreen to a mix of budding deciduous trees. The air felt different here, warmer, heavier with moisture, carrying scents of growth rather than the clean, sharp aromas of the high country. Lower elevations. Wake earlier from winter sleep, Nathan observed during a brief rest. Mountain flowers still wait beneath snow, while valley blooms already begin. Sophia nodded, feeling oddly disoriented by the rapid transition. After months in the high country, this middle elevation seemed almost tropical by comparison, a reminder of how dramatically their environment would change as they continued toward the Missouri lowlands. The first night of their journey, they camped in a small clearing beside a stream swollen with snowmelt. Nathan efficiently established their camp, while Sophia tended to Elizabeth's needs. Their practiced teamwork reflected months of shared living, each anticipating the other's requirements without discussion. "Sleep in shifts tonight," Nathan suggested as he prepared a small, nearly smokeless fire. Not deep enough in wilderness yet for complete safety. Militia patrols possible even here. Sophia agreed, settling Elizabeth for the night in the specialized carrying cradle Nathan had designed for travel. The infant had handled the journey's first day remarkably well, sleeping through the roughest terrain and waking only for feeding and changing. "She's resilient," Sophia remarked proudly. "A true frontier child already." Nathan smiled briefly. Those rare expressions Sophia had learned to treasure. Strong mother creates strong daughter. Blood remembers courage. That night passed uneventfully. Though Sophia found sleep elusive during her designated rest period, her senses hyper-aware of every forest sound. The familiar security of the cabin felt increasingly distant, replaced by the vulnerable exposure of open travel. When they resumed their journey at dawn, she found herself constantly scanning their surroundings, imagining militia patrols behind every ridge. "Anxiety natural," Nathan commented, noticing her vigilance. "But wasted energy unless danger actually present. Cherokee hunters say, 'Watch where you step, not where you fear falling.'" The gentle correction helped Sophia refocus, conserving her strength for real challenges rather than imagined threats. By the third day, they had established an efficient travel rhythm, covering approximately 10 miles daily. Impressive progress considering the terrain and their necessary caution. Their planned route deliberately avoided established trails and settlements, following instead the natural corridors created by stream valleys and game paths. Nathan demonstrated remarkable navigation skills, seemingly able to maintain their intended direction despite the winding nature of their path. When Sophia commented on this ability, he extracted a small brass object from his medicine pouch. "Compass," he explained, displaying the instrument that matched the one Thomas had carried. "Gift from Sarah's father, who served as army guide. Useful tool when clouds hide sun and stars." This unexpected commonality with Thomas, both men valuing the precision of compass navigation, struck Sophia as somehow significant, though she couldn't articulate exactly why. Perhaps it represented the practical bridge between worlds that both men had attempted to build in their different ways. On the fourth day, they encountered their first potential complication when the sound of voices carried from the ridge above their position. Nathan immediately signaled for silence, leading them into the dense cover of a rhododendron thicket while the voices passed. From their concealment, they glimpsed 3 men on horseback, not militia from their dress, but frontier hunters whose alliance remained uncertain. "Local trappers," Nathan whispered once the men had passed. "Not actively hunting Cherokee, but would report sighting if asked by authorities." This encounter, though briefly frightening, provided valuable information. Mounted parties were already traversing areas they had expected to remain isolated for another week or more. The spring thaw had progressed faster than anticipated in the lower elevations, accelerating the militia's potential timeline. "Need to adjust route," Nathan decided during their evening camp. "Stay higher longer, follow ridgelines rather than valleys when possible. Harder travel, but fewer encounters." The revised path required more strenuous climbing, placing additional strain on all of them, particularly Maple, who struggled with steeper inclines while carrying their supplies. Sophia found muscles long unused protesting the constant up and down of ridge travel, while Elizabeth became increasingly fussy, sensing her mother's discomfort and the disrupted routine. After a particularly difficult day negotiating a series of steep ravines, Sophia's exhaustion manifested as momentary despair. "Are we being foolish?" she asked as they established their night's camp beneath a rock overhang. "Maybe we should have waited until Elizabeth was older before attempting this journey." Nathan considered her question seriously rather than offering immediate reassurance. "No perfect timing existed," he finally replied. "Later journey means stronger militia presence, more organized patrols. Earlier means colder weather, more snow danger. He gestured toward the western horizon, where they could glimpse distant lowlands through gaps in the foothills. Path narrows. Sometimes must take when available. His pragmatic assessment helped restore Sophia's perspective. There had never been an easy option, only necessary choices with accompanying risks. The path forward, however difficult, remained preferable to waiting passively for danger to find them. The following morning brought unexpected sunshine that lifted their spirits and dried the perpetually damp clothing they'd endured since leaving. The high country. Elizabeth seemed particularly responsive to the improved conditions, cooing and watching the shifting patterns of light through new spring leaves during their rest periods. "First smile," Nathan observed, during one such moment, his expression softening as Elizabeth's face briefly transformed with a reflexive but distinct smile. Important milestone. Sophia felt her throat tighten at this simple developmental achievement occurring amid their wilderness journey. She likes the forest, she noted. The movement, the changing light. She seems most content when we're moving. Natural. State for humans, Nathan commented. We forget, living in fixed dwellings. Body designed for movement, senses for variety. He adjusted Elizabeth's blanket with surprising gentleness. She remembers what adults forget. By the 10th day of travel, they had successfully navigated the most challenging mountain terrain and began their approach toward the Missouri River watershed. The landscape gradually opened into broader valleys, separated by gentler ridges, with visible signs of increased human activity, occasional distant cabins, felled timber, even smoke from settlements beyond the next ridgeline. This transition zone presented new challenges. While physically easier to traverse, the increased human presence meant greater risk of discovery. Nathan adjusted their travel schedule, moving primarily during early morning and evening hours, while remaining concealed during times when settlers typically worked their fields or hunted in the forests. They encountered their most serious threat on the 12th day, when the distant sound of barking dogs and men's voices froze them in place as they crossed an exposed meadow. Nathan immediately identified the threat. "Hunting party with tracking dogs," he stated, his voice tight with concern. "Wind carries our scent directly to them." Without hesitation, he led them toward a nearby creek, wading upstream to break their scent trail, a technique Sophia had only read about in frontier narratives, but now experienced firsthand, the cold water numbing her feet as they moved swiftly along the streambed. "Creek joins river half-mile ahead," Nathan explained as they sloshed forward. "Water deeper there. Dogs lose trail completely." The evasion worked, though Elizabeth's startled cries at the sudden water immersion nearly revealed their position before Sophia could soothe her. When they finally emerged on the far bank almost a mile upstream, the hunting party had disappeared into different territory, allowing them to resume their journey with renewed caution. That evening, as they dried their sodden footwear beside a carefully shielded fire, Sophia found herself thinking about the contrast between Nathan's calm efficiency during danger and her own barely suppressed panic. "How do you remain so composed?" she asked. "Even when those dogs were clearly on our trail, you never showed fear." Nathan continued methodically positioning their boots near the warming stones. "Fear exists inside," he acknowledged. "But acting from fear creates mistakes. Cherokee hunters learn early. Feel fear, acknowledge fear, then set aside to act clearly." He looked up, meeting her eyes directly. Not absence of fear, but mastery of it. This philosophy resonated with Sophia, who recognized how her own fears for Elizabeth sometimes clouded her judgment. "I need to learn that mastery," she admitted. "Already." "Learning," Nathan countered. "Creek crossing showed courage despite fear." Elizabeth sensed Mother's eventual calm, responded accordingly. Their progress over the next 4 days brought them to the approach of a significant milestone, the Missouri River itself, which they would need to cross to continue toward St. Louis. From a concealed vantage point on a forested bluff, they observed the broad waterway for the first time, its spring-swollen current carrying debris and entire uprooted trees downstream with frightening force. "Cannot cross here," Nathan stated definitively. "Need ferry or shallow ford upstream." According to their maps and Nathan's knowledge, the nearest potential crossing point lay 20 miles upriver, a significant deviation from their direct route, but necessary given the river's current dangerous condition. This change in plans required them to travel parallel to the river, following its meandering course through increasingly settled territory. They adopted extreme caution, traveling primarily at night and concealing themselves during daylight hours. Nathan applied particular techniques to minimize their trail, brushing out footprints, traveling on rocky ground when possible, and occasionally doubling back to confuse any potential trackers. On their second night of riverside travel, they received their first concrete intelligence about the militia when they overheard conversations at a remote riverside tavern they carefully skirted. From their concealment in nearby woods, they could distinguish fragments of discussion among rivermen loading supplies. Harding's company offering $50 per Cherokee captured alive, $25 for proof of those killed, one voice declared. "Says territory governor wants mountains cleared before summer. Waste of good manpower," another replied. "Most Indians already gone west, just scattered families remaining in high country." Harding claims at least 30 holdouts, the first voice countered. "Says they're harboring runaways and stirring up trouble. His men already caught 2 near Black Mountain last week." This information chilled Sophia, despite the mild spring evening. The militia campaign was already underway, with actual captures reported. Their decision to leave the mountain sanctuary had been timely, though the danger remained pressing. Most concerning was the mention of Black Mountain, an area not far from Nathan's cabin, suggesting the militia was operating precisely in the territory they had recently fled. When they returned to their hidden camp, Nathan's expression remained stoic, but Sophia had learned to read the subtle indicators of his concern, a certain tightness around his eyes, the deliberately measured quality of his movements. "News confirms our decision," he said simply. "Leaving mountains was necessary." "But the river crossing still lies ahead," Sophia noted, cradling a sleeping Elizabeth. "And beyond that, territory we know even less about." Nathan nodded acknowledgement. "Journey's middle often hardest, not sustained by beginning's determination or end's proximity." He checked their remaining supplies with practiced efficiency. "Must find ferry or ford within 3 days. Provisions low, especially for maple." The unspoken reality hung between them. Their carefully planned journey had reached its most critical and vulnerable phase, with increasing settlement reducing, hiding places while natural obstacles demanded interaction with potentially hostile strangers. The river crossing represented not just a physical barrier, but a transition into new dangers that would test their adaptability and trust in each other. That night, as Elizabeth slept peacefully between them in their concealed camp, Sophia found herself reaching across the small space to grasp Nathan's hand, a spontaneous gesture seeking reassurance but also offering it. His fingers closed around hers without hesitation, warm and strong, despite the calluses hardening his palm. No words were necessary as they contemplated the rushing river sounds in the darkness, both understanding that whatever challenges awaited, on the opposite shore they would face them together. Boston widow, Cherokee healer, and the infant daughter who had unexpectedly bound their fates into a single, shared journey. Fortune finally smiled upon the travelers when they discovered an aging ferry crossing operated by a grizzled riverman named Jenkins. Unlike the bustling commercial ferries downstream, this crossing served primarily local farmers and was situated at a natural narrowing of the Missouri. Most importantly, Jenkins himself proved unexpectedly sympathetic to their situation. Served with Cherokee scouts during the War of 1812, he explained gruffly when Nathan cautiously approached him after observing the operation for a full day. "Good men who saved my company more than once. Don't hold with this removal business." With surprising discretion, Jenkins arranged to ferry them across during pre-dawn hours when no other travelers would be present. He even refused payment, though he accepted Nathan's offer of medicinal herbs for his clearly arthritic hands. "These will ease the joint pain better than whiskey," Nathan assured him, demonstrating how to prepare the remedy. "Obliged," Jenkins replied, studying Nathan with weathered eyes. "Word of warning, though. Militia company's been through here twice in past week, showing sketches of Cherokee faces, offering bounties, heading up toward mountain territories mostly, but keep yourselves scarce nonetheless." The crossing itself proved nerve-wracking despite Jenkins's skill. Spring floods had transformed the Missouri into a roiling torrent that tested both ferry and ferryman. Maple the pony required considerable coaxing to board the wooden platform, while Elizabeth, sensing the adult's tension, began crying inconsolably halfway across. "River spirits always demand respect," Nathan commented as they finally reached the western shore, his normally steady hands showing slight tremors after the perilous passage. With the Missouri behind them, their journey entered its final phase. The terrain west of the river presented new challenges. More open country, with fewer forests for concealment, larger settlements connected by established roads, and increased military presence related to Western territorial expansion. Different strategy needed now, Nathan determined after studying their maps. "Cannot avoid settlements completely. Need to appear as ordinary travelers." This necessitated a significant adjustment in their approach. Nathan retrieved clothing he had packed specifically for this purpose, garments typical of frontier settlers, rather than his usual blend of Cherokee and European attire. Sophia modified her own appearance to suggest a properly married frontier woman, using her wedding ring from Thomas and fabricating a simple story about traveling to join family in St. Louis after winter isolation. "Your speech marks you as educated Eastern woman," Nathan observed. "Use this. People expect Boston woman to travel with hired guide, not question relationship further." Their new personas proved effective when circumstances forced them to pass through a small trading settlement to replenish critical supplies. Nathan assumed the role of taciturn guide, while Sophia handled the transactions with confident authority that discouraged unnecessary questions. "Remarkable how people see what they expect to see," Sophia reflected that evening as they camped, several miles beyond the settlement. No one questioned a white woman traveling with her baby and a Cherokee guide because it fit their understanding of proper arrangements. "Appearances powerful," Nathan agreed. "Same journey, different clothing. Suddenly, dangerous becomes acceptable." As they approached within 50 miles of St. Louis, evidence of civilization increased dramatically. More frequent farmsteads, better maintained roads, regular stagecoach traffic, even occasional military patrols. Their progress slowed as they were forced to travel more circuitously to maintain their careful masquerade. Their final major obstacle emerged unexpectedly when they encountered a military checkpoint established on the main approach to St. Louis. From concealment, they observed soldiers inspecting all travelers' documentation before allowing passage, a procedure Nathan explained was likely related to ongoing tensions with native tribes, rather than specifically targeting them. "Need papers to pass checkpoint," he explained, studying the situation with characteristic thoroughness. "Travel documents, identification." Sophia's heart sank. While they carried Nathan's legal documentation intended for presentation in St. Louis, these weren't suitable for checkpoint inspection. Discovery would likely result in Nathan's immediate detention rather than the fair hearing they sought. "Perhaps I could pass through alone with Elizabeth," she suggested reluctantly. "Make initial contact with Thomas's associates, then arrange proper representation for you." Nathan shook his head firmly. "Too dangerous. Militia descriptions likely. Include white woman with infant and Cherokee man. Separation creates vulnerability for both." As they debated alternatives, Elizabeth began fussing insistently. While Sophia attended to her daughter's needs, Nathan continued observing the checkpoint operations. When she rejoined him, his expression had shifted from concern to thoughtful calculation. "Military checkpoint follows patterns," he noted. "Changes. Guard at sunset. New soldiers less attentive first hour of duty. Also, stagecoach receives minimal inspection. Too many passengers to examine thoroughly." From these observations emerged their boldest stratagem yet. The following afternoon found Sophia waiting at a small crossroad settlement where, according to their intelligence, the eastbound stagecoach stopped briefly before continuing to St. Louis. She had purchased passage using funds from the small store of coins Thomas had sewn into her clothing. The same coins that had survived the wilderness abandonment and months in the mountain cabin. Nathan, meanwhile, had disappeared hours earlier with his portion of their supplies and Maple the pony, implementing his aspect of their audacious plan. When the stagecoach arrived, dust-covered and crowded with travelers, Sophia boarded with Elizabeth, presenting the carefully rehearsed story of a Boston widow completing her delayed journey to relatives in St. Louis. The other passengers, a merchant, 2 farmers' wives returning from visiting relatives, and an elderly minister, accepted her presence without suspicion, even offering assistance with Elizabeth during the jolting journey. As anticipated, the military checkpoint processed the stagecoach with minimal scrutiny, the guards merely glancing at passengers through the windows before waving the vehicle forward. What the soldiers failed to notice was the additional passenger who had silently joined the undercarriage, while the coach paused at a creek crossing several miles back. Nathan, clinging to the framework in a feat of physical endurance that left him battered but successfully past the checkpoint. He rejoined Sophia that evening at the coaching inn, where passengers rested for the night, slipping through her window after darkness fell. His clothes were torn and filthy, his skin abraded from road contact, but the triumph in his eyes matched Sophia's own exhilaration at their successful gambit. "Tomorrow, St. Louis," he said simply, accepting the water and food she had saved from her dinner. The city appeared on the horizon the following afternoon, larger and more imposing than Sophia had imagined despite Thomas's descriptions. Smoke from countless chimneys created a haze above clustered buildings that stretched along the Mississippi River's western bank, steamboats and flatboats crowding the waterfront in testimony to the city's commercial importance. Their stagecoach delivered them to the central square, where Sophia bid farewell to her traveling companions and secured directions to the offices of Winslow Trading Company, one of Thomas's primary business contacts and their best hope for the influential assistance they sought. Augustus Winslow, the company's founder, proved initially skeptical when Sophia presented herself at his office, claiming connection to a business associate presumed long dead in the wilderness. His demeanor transformed dramatically, however, when she produced Thomas's personal letters and business documents, complete with distinctive seals and signatures Winslow immediately recognized. "My dear Mrs. Miller," he exclaimed, rising from behind his substantial desk. "We had given up hope of any survivors from that ill-fated wagon train. Please, you must tell me everything." Over the next hour, Sophia related a carefully edited version of her experiences, emphasizing Nathan's role in rescuing her and Elizabeth while omitting certain details that might prejudice Winslow before the full legal situation could be explained. When she finally revealed Nathan's presence in St. Louis and their purpose in seeking Winslow's assistance, the trader's expression grew grave. "What you're suggesting, challenging territorial removal policies through legal channels, is politically sensitive," he cautioned. "However," he continued, studying the documents Nathan had entrusted to Sophia, "these legal recognitions appear entirely legitimate. As a citizen with documented property rights, your Cherokee friend has standing for judicial review." Winslow's connections proved as substantial as Thomas had described. Within days, he had arranged a meeting with James Whitmore, editor of the prominent Western Examiner newspaper, and Richard Hargrove, an attorney known for successfully challenging governmental overreach. Most crucially, he provided secure accommodations where Nathan could remain safely concealed until proper legal protection could be arranged. The momentum of their cause accelerated beyond expectation when Whitmore published a carefully crafted front-page article detailing what he termed the shameful contradiction of Cherokee removal. Without naming Nathan specifically, the piece outlined the legal inconsistencies in territorial policy, emphasizing the case of a Cherokee citizen with documented Revolutionary War lineage facing persecution despite legal protections guaranteed by the highest authorities. The publication created immediate controversy, drawing attention from reform-minded politicians seeking issues to champion against the current territorial administration. When evidence emerged of authorized militia bounties for capturing or killing legally recognized citizens of Cherokee descent, public sentiment shifted dramatically in favor of judicial review. 6 weeks after their arrival in St. Louis, Nathan attended his first public hearing before a federal circuit judge, represented by Hargrove and supported by affidavits from several prominent citizens, including Winslow, who testified to Nathan's character and the legitimacy of his documentation. The proceedings attracted considerable attention, with the courtroom filled beyond capacity and newspaper correspondents documenting every development. The judge's preliminary ruling sent shockwaves through territorial governance. Militia activities against legally documented Cherokee citizens were immediately suspended pending full review, and Nathan received temporary federal protection while his case proceeded through proper judicial channels. "This represents merely the beginning," Hargrove cautioned, as they celebrated this initial victory in Winslow's private study. "The territorial authorities will appeal, and the full resolution may require years of legal maneuvering. But the principle has been established," Winslow added more optimistically. "The law must apply equally, even in frontier territories. Your case, Nathan, provides the perfect test for exposing these contradictions." Throughout these developments, Sophia remained steadfastly involved, providing testimony when required, and managing practical arrangements as Nathan navigated unfamiliar urban society. Elizabeth thrived in more comfortable circumstances, growing plumper and more responsive each day, her presence softening even the most skeptical official attitudes toward their unusual situation. As summer blossomed across the Missouri Territory, Sophia and Nathan found themselves at a crossroads, similar to the one they had faced in the mountain cabin months earlier, but with expanded possibilities before them. "Hargrove believes final ruling will establish my right to return to ancestral lands with federal protection," Nathan explained one evening as they walked along the Mississippi riverfront, Elizabeth sleeping peacefully in Sophia's arms. "Or alternatively, secure equivalent compensation allowing settlement elsewhere." "And what do you want?" Sophia asked, the question encompassing far more than legal outcomes. Nathan considered thoughtfully, watching steamboats maneuver against the powerful current. "Want justice for Cherokee, who remain hidden in mountains," he replied. "Want Elizabeth to grow without shadows of prejudice." He turned to face Sophia. "Directly. Want path that allows us to walk together if Sophia desires same." The simple declaration, devoid of flowery romance yet profound in its sincerity, touched Sophia deeply. Their journey had transformed them both, creating a bond forged through survival, mutual respect, and gradually acknowledged love that transcended conventional relationships. "I do desire the same," she answered with matching directness. "Thomas will always remain Elizabeth's father by blood and my first love, but life continues, as you've taught me. New paths emerge when we're brave enough to walk them." Their union formalized later that summer through both Christian ceremony and Cherokee traditions, raised eyebrows throughout St. Louis society. Yet those who witnessed their evident devotion and the unique family they had created found their prejudices challenged by living example rather than abstract principle. The legal battle continued for nearly 3 years, eventually establishing precedent that protected dozens of Cherokee families with similar documentation. Nathan's medical knowledge, combining traditional healing practices with European techniques, attracted growing respect from St. Louis physicians, leading to an unexpected career providing medical training to doctors preparing for frontier service. Sophia, meanwhile, discovered her own unexpected path. Her articulate accounts of frontier experiences and observations on intercultural relations, published initially in local newspapers, gradually expanded into a successful writing career that challenged prevailing narratives about native peoples and frontier women. Elizabeth grew into a bright, confident child who moved comfortably between cultures, attending proper St. Louis schools while absorbing Cherokee language and traditions from Nathan. Later joined by 2 younger siblings who embodied their parents' blended heritage, she became living testimony to possibilities beyond the rigid separations that dominated her era. The mountain cabin remained part of their lives, though transformed. From survival shelter to summer home, where the family returned annually, Nathan maintained connection with remaining Cherokee in the region, providing ongoing medical service and legal assistance secured through their St. Louis connections. Elizabeth's 10th birthday, they made a special journey to the ridge above the cabin, where Sarah and Jonathan lay buried. Nathan and Sophia had long since established a tradition of honoring all family members, present and absent, who had shaped their unlikely journey. "Without loss, we would never have found each other," Sophia observed, as Elizabeth carefully placed wildflowers on both her father's memorial marker and the graves of Nathan's first family. "Grief opened paths to new beginnings," Nathan nodded, watching their daughter with quiet pride. "Cherokee wisdom says life travels in circle, not straight line. Endings become beginnings when viewed from proper perspective." As twilight settled, over the mountains that had witnessed both their greatest challenges and most profound connection, Nathan and Sophia stood with their children, the living embodiment of renewed hope emerging from wilderness and prejudice. Their extraordinary journey had transformed not just their own lives, but expanded possibilities for those who would follow the trail they had blazed through America's cultural wilderness, a legacy of courage, healing, and love that transcended the boundaries of their time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.